5 Melbourne suburbs in the north are set up to boom in 2026, and the data is already moving while the prices haven't caught up just yet. That gap is the opportunity. I'm going to walk you through all 5. The macro setup that makes this corridor different. 5 lenses I run across every suburb before I put a client in it or even buy for myself. What your money buys at 700k, 800k and $1 million plus. And the priority pick I'd buy first myself. By the end, you'll have a 5 suburb shortlist that's already positioned for the next leg of growth. Before I name the 5, you need to see what's actually happening across the corridor, because the macro picture tells you why these suburbs are positioned the way they are. Across all 5 suburbs we're looking at today, Doreen, Mernda, South Morang, Epping and Westmeadows, the data is stacking up exactly the same way. Vacancy rates between 1.22% and 1%. The healthy benchmark is just at 2%, or at less than half of that. Inventory between 1.34 to 1.71 months across all 4. Healthy is a 1 to 2. We're at the bottom end of that range, meaning when properties are listing, they get absorbed almost immediately. Auction clearance rates between 78.7% and 85%, quite healthy in the current climate that we're in. Properties going to auction in this corridor are selling, and they're selling close to or above reserve. Vendor discounting between 0 and 2%. Sellers are getting their asking price. And with building approvals, the number of new homes coming into the supply pipeline are essentially a big fat 0. 3 in Westmeadows, 6 in Doreen, 13 in Epping, 45 in South Morang. Across all 5 suburbs and almost 33,000 dwellings, the pipeline of new housing is functionally non-existent, which means housing supply simply can't respond for the local demand. The infrastructure side is the same story, but already delivered. The Mernda Road Extension, Northern Hospital, Pacific Epping Shopping Centre, the Melbourne Airport Corridor, multiple high schools, primary schools, parkland networks. Now, none of this is being built. It is already here. It's already operational. Meanwhile, borrowing capacity at 4.35% cash rate is pushing buyers who could have bought in the inner suburbs in 2019 or 2020 outwards into that middle ring. And in the Melbourne's middle ring north, 700k to 1 mil still buys a family size home on land. That's not true in the east, it's not true in the southeast. The north is the last place in Melbourne where mid-budget buyers can still buy a freestanding house, and they know it. That demand pressure plus near zero supply is a setup for the next leg of price growth. Now, when I run an investment grade analysis on a suburb, I'm not just looking at one number. I'm running it through 5 different lenses. Let's start with 1, scarcity, building approvals, stock on market, days on market. Is the supply tight across a long-term, medium-term and short-term horizon? Number 2, infrastructure, already delivered, not promised. Trains, hospitals, schools, retail. Number 3, historical performance at the 10-year and the 3-year compounded growth, volatility and rental growth. Number 4, further demand driver, demographics, household income, ERSAD ranking, but also what's pushing forward. Number 5, owner-occupier appeal, owner-occupier ratio, hold period, clearance rate. Are people buying to live or are people buying to flip? A suburb has to score across all 5 of me to put them into the list. Let's go through all of them and walk through 1 suburb at a time. First one, Doreen, postcode 3754 with a medium house price of just over $1 million. And at 900 to $1 million, you're getting a 4-bed, 2-bath on 500 to 700 square meters in Lorimer or Rivergum Estate. At over $1 million, you're stepping into plenty River Gorge frontage. Doreen is the biggest and strongest capital growth in this entire pick, with a capital growth score of 95 out of 100, the highest of any suburb in this video. Lens 1, scarcity is at its extreme level. 6 building approvals across nearly 11,000 dwellings, That is a 0.06% new supply rate, effectively zero. Inventory at 1.37 months, your stock on market at 0.31% and declining, and there's nothing to buy in Doreen. When a property does this, it sells in about 26 days with 0.8% vendor discounting. Buyers are competing here, homeowners are competing, and the negotiating power becomes a lot harder. Lens number 2, the infrastructure is mature. Doreen connects to the CBD via the Mernda train. It's been operational since 2018. We've got multiple primary schools and secondary schools. The Lower Mile Town Centre to where I'm standing right now for retail. Plenty Gorge Parkland. The infrastructure isn't coming. It's delivered, it's mature, and that maturity is why the hold period is over 8 years and the recent auction clearance is almost in your 90%. Every property going to auction is ultimately selling. And lens number 3, the historical performance is the strongest in the analysis. 9.41% annualized growth over 10 years. It's got a volatility index of 5 over 10. So 500K invested in Doreen 10 years ago is worth 1.2 mil today. And the 3-year compound growth of 5.93% shows it kept compounding even for the rate hike cycle, which is good news. Lens number 4, future demand is structural. We've got an ersatz of 8, a medium household income of 2,650 a week. That's about 140K a year. These are dual income professional families with a medium age of about 33 to 35, an average household of 3. As these households are mature and incomes rise, they simply do not leave Doreen. They upgrade within it. We've got a whopping 80% owner-occupier ratio, and a long hold period of 8+ years confirms it. This is what makes this suburb really work, right? We're in a beautiful, well-manufactured park. It took us 4 minutes to get here. In all honesty, this is what makes this suburb so owner-occupier appeal. You perch up on the hill, you've got views towards the mountain views. That is why you've got an 80% owner-occupier versus a 20% renter. Even if these homes are on a 400 lot square, there's no backyard, but you've got a massive backyard to take care of here, which to the dads and mums out there, you do not have to spend your Sundays mowing the grass because council does that for you. Lens number 5, the owner-occupier appeal is the engine room of capital growth here. Almost up to 90% plus clearance rates, 26 days on market, 0.8% discounting, 80% owner-occupier. These families are choosing Doreen over adjacent suburbs because of the schools, the river corridor, train line, and the village feel of Lower Mile Town Centre just right here. Owner-occupiers bid emotionally, pay premiums for the right streets and the right pocket, and that emotional premium is what is compounding and driving growth beyond what the numbers alone would suggest. The 5-year projection, the realistic projection from 35 to 50% cumulative growth, 6 to 8% compound. 700 today becomes roughly 1.3 to 1.5 mil. That's an equity gain of $358 to $512,000. Swimming pools in a fair few homes in the backyard of Doreen. That's definitely says a good thing. Money, money, money. Next one, Mernda, same postcode as Doreen, 3754. And guess what? Your typical house price is discounted by 200K from the $1 million mark at 854,000. At 700 to 825K, you're looking at a 3 to 4 bed in the newer established estates. Once you're pushing above that 850, you're touching the established pockets closer towards the Plenty River corridor. Premium real estate. 5 beds will sit around that $1 million mark. Mernda scores a capital growth score 76 out of 100. The standout here is risk. It has a lower risk score at 97 out of 100, being the highest lower risk in the entire top 5 Melbourne corridor. Lens 1, supply is short and constrained. We've got 54 building approvals across nearly 10,000 existing dwellings. That's a 0.61% of new supply rate incoming. Still well under 1%. Inventory, about just over 1 month of stock holding tight. stock on market at 0.31% and declining, and only 28 unsold listings across the entire suburb. When a property lists, it sells within its 3-week campaign, and that is what we're seeing on the ground too. Now, Mernda is not flooded with new stock, but unlike Doreen, it's just enough turnover at 447 annual sales to actually transact. You can simply get in, but also enough volume if you need to transact yourself out. Lens number 2, the infrastructure is delivered and deepening. Mernda connects to the CBD via the Mernda Rail extension. Mernda Junction and the Mernda Town Centre is active for daily retail convenience. We've got your Woolies, your BWSs, your My Chemists, all the functional components of day-to-day living. We've got new services where population growth is happening. 23,000 adults across nearly 10,000 dwellings, and critically non-residential building approval spend is 311 per capita. What this tells us is that the government and the private sector is simply still investing here. The infrastructure isn't just delivered, it's deepening, with Mernda Community Hospital recently opened last year. That ongoing investment is what separates a suburb that's finished from one that is still compounding with growth over time. Lens number 3, the historical performance is strong and consistent. 143% growth over 10 years. That's an annualized rate of just above 9%. Volatility index is a 4 out of 10. The 5-year compound rate sits at 33.5%, and the 3-year number of growth at 12.2% tells you that growth continued through the rate hiking cycle rate. It slowed, it didn't stop. The growth pattern is flagged as at near peak, which means you're buying in a proven performer, not trying to time the recovery. The spillover potential from Doreen is 56% above its broader LGA over 10 years. This suburb doesn't ride the tide. It leads it, it maintains it. Lens number 4, future demand is structural. You've got a healthy earth out of 7. That's a sweet spot, not the wealthiest suburb on the map, but affluent enough that households have real borrowing capacity and spending power. 96% of dwellings are freestanding houses. There's only about 4% unit. This is a family-led demographic market. Your hold period is warping into your 9 years. People move to Mernda and they literally just stay and call it home. Got a vacancy rate of 1.78% and declining, rents hovering above 500 per week, returning a sub 3.1 yield. That rental tightness supports the floor under prices even if the sales market softens. And lens number 5. This is where it gets exciting. Its owner-occupier appeal is the capital growth fuel engine. A little bit less than Doreen, 73% owner-occupier. Auction clearance rate sitting at 67%. Your days on market is still at 28 days. And these families are choosing Mernda for the train line, the schools, the parkland along Plenty George, and the village feel of the town centre. Owners occupiers simply do not buy on yield. They could not care less. They buy on lifestyle, on amenity, and when they bid emotionally. That emotional premium is what separates a suburb that grows at 5% from one that compounds above 9%, just like Mernda. The 5-year projection. Let's look at the realistic projection from 25 to 40% cumulative growth, 5 to 7 compound. The 700 entry today becomes roughly 910 to 980k. An equity gain of 175k to 280k. At an 854 entry, you're looking at roughly above 1 million to 1.1 million. Now, Mernda doesn't have the extreme scarcity numbers that Doreen has. The risk profile is nearly identical. The infrastructure is arguably a lot more complete, and the entry price is 200k lower than Doreen. So for an investor who wants exposure to this corridor at a more accessible price point, Mernda might be your play. Did you know there's this one suburb in Melbourne where you can hop on the train from Melbourne CBD, get off the train station and run a couple of stairs into a shopping centre you're on? Let's go. Number 3, South Morang, postcode 3752. We got a median price of $983,000, almost touching that $1 million point. But remember, that's median. At $850 to $950, you got a 4-bed, 2-bath on about 450 to 600 square meters in Mill Park Lakes or Hawkstow Park Lakes. At $950K, you're into the larger blocks near the Lakes Estate. Now, South Morang is the lowest risk pick in this video. It has a risk adjusted score of 98 out of 100. What this means, it means investors who want consistent growth without surprises coming down your way. Next one, Scarcity, 45 building approvals against 10,745 dwellings. That is 0.5%. Inventory is at 1.71% months, a little bit more than our Doreen's and Mernda. Stock on market at 0.36%. South Morang is established and built out. New supply isn't coming. 342 annual sales provide market liquidity. But the 10.26-year average hold period tells you owners aren't going anywhere and courting Westfield South Morang home. When they do sell, 27 days on market, 2.03% discounting at a whopping 81% auction clearance rate. Lens number 2, infrastructure galore, fully delivered. Standing on the steps of South Morang Station on the Mernda line, Westfield Plenty Valley is here as a major retail hub right behind me. Northern Hospital within 10 minutes of this hub. Multiple established schools plus proximity to Wollert and Donnybrook growth areas. Meaning what? The new outer suburb residents around are using South Morang for shopping, healthcare, education without competing for its housing. Then number 3, the historical performance, the consistency story, 5.74% annualized over 10 years. It's got a volatility index of 4 out of 10, the lowest of all 5 suburbs in this video. 3-year compounded average growth of 3.63% reflects obviously the rate hike headwind. The 1-year bounce of 6.73% over 2025 shows that the recovery is well underway. The rental growth at 7.62% over 3 years confirms fundamental demand, but also pressure on the rental market. Lens number 4, the standard future demand with a strong sale of 7 and a whopping medium household of 2,500 a week, slightly above that of Doreen. So we're seeing 132,000 per year household income, median age of 30, household size of 3. So it's a sweet demographic spot, looking at established families with school-age kids, deeply embedded in the local community. And here's a killer stat, 1.31% rental vacancy, the tightest of all 5 suburbs. Renters who get a property in South Morang here simply do not leave. Lens number 5, the owner-occupier appeal. 79% owner-occupier ratio and an 81% auction clearance rate. A solid 10-year on average hold period. We picture a suburb where people buy, raise families, shop and stay for a decade. The 8% unit and townhouse ratio also provides that housing diversity for downsizers and young couples who can enter the South Morang market without completely competing directly with family buyers for the larger 4-bed home. Now let's unpack the 5-year projection. At a 30 to 45% compounded growth, your 700k becomes 1.28 million on average, and that is a whopping equity gain of almost 300k to 400k. I mean, that's a perfect, cute little, cute is not the right word in investing landscape, but that is a very well manufactured owner-occupier home, right? Gardens well kept, easy, low maintenance home, immaculate brickwork, the roof line has really been taken care of. But also what we're seeing, it's not just a one-off home. The consistency of these type of homes is definitely in that strip here. Looking at it, the home next door follows a very similar appeal, and we've got a fair few other blocks down the way following the very same type of home. Owner-occupier dominant, well-kept grass and curbside appeal. So this is what you want. South Morang is a nice, safe investment. The data, the research, the amenities backs it and supports it. Number 4, Epping, postcode 3076, median house price of $776,000. Now, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. This must be the best entry point in the established Northern Corridor, sitting 16 to 18% below the Melbourne metro median, with an infrastructure that is already fully functional. At 650k to 750k, you get a solid 3-bed on about 450 to 550 square meters. At 750 to 850, you step into a 4-bed, 2-bath on 550 square meters plus. Next one, Scarcity, the deepest in this whole video. 13 building approvals across 16,000 plus dwellings, bringing it down to 0.11%. That's near zero new supply in a suburb of almost 35,000 plus adults. Now your inventory is at 1.37 months. Your stock on market at 0.27%, the lowest in the analysis. Zero vendor discounting to what we're seeing, 78.7% clearance rate. When supply is this constrained and demand is this strong, there's only one direction for all prices. Not down, 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 but up, up, up. Your lens number 2, infrastructure, the strongest in the corridor. And this is where I'm standing right now. Epping is the infrastructure hub of Melbourne's entire Northern Corridor. The Northern Hospital, major tertiary facilities, ongoing expansion, Pacific Epping, Epping train station on the Mernda line, the Melbourne wholesale fruit and vegetable market relocated to Epping, the major employment node. The Cooper Street employment corridor connects to the Hume Freeway. What are we seeing here? Multiple primary and secondary schools, fully delivered, fully operational, fully functional, tested and proven. Then it's number 3, the historical performance. 4.9% annualized over 10 years. The rental growth of 8.25% over 3 years, being one of the strongest in this top 5 analysis. Now a whole period of almost 11 years and climbing, the second longest, and the yield is at about 3.5%, the best in the group. That makes Epping the strongest dual return proposition in this corridor. Growth plus income is what it has the ability to deliver on. Your lens number 4, future demand. Epping is where the population from the outer growth suburbs of Wollert, Donnybrook, Mickleham, Craigieburn comes for services. You've got the Northern Hospital, Pacific Epping, the wholesale market employment. All of that anchors one thing: demand, demand, demand. As the outer Northern Corridor adds 50,000 plus residents over the next decade, Epping's role as the service and employment epicenter hub will only strengthen over time without the ability of absorbing the housing supply pressure itself. Lens number 5, the same common theme that comes across: owner-occupier appeal. 71% owner-occupier ratio, a median age of about 35 years, a household size of 3, a 21% unit ratio providing for housing diversity, hence why we're seeing a little bit more renters here. Again, a similar story of zero vendor discounting and 78.7 auction clearance rates tells you buyers are committed in the current market. At 776k, Epping is the most accessible suburb in this video for a first-time investor or simply a first home buyer. And with 3.55% yield means that the hoarding costs becomes a little bit more manageable as opposed to the other 5. Let's unpack your 5-year projection. We're seeing a healthy 25 to 40% compounded growth across 5 to 7%. So what does this mean? Let's unpack this. 700k becomes 970k to a mil, an equity gain of 190k to 215k, and this is what Epping has the capacity to deliver on. The epicenter roundabout where it all happens. To my left, you've got Pacific Epping. Think of Uniqlo, Big W, JB Hi-Fi, Coles, all your major outlets being that shopping hub. To the right, we've got the Northern Hospital. This is where you go and treat your shopping addiction, right into the emergency corridor there. And you follow down straight through here, you've got Northern Health, and you go down into bulk land of Costco galore. So this is where it all happens, and you can definitely see this epicenter being fueled by Epping, and one which then radiates itself out into South Morang, Doreen, Mernda, Westmeadows, and it all. This is a heart that brings it all together, and you can see and hopefully feel my excitement why Epping is that suburb that is fueling the Northern Corridor. Number 5, Westmeadows, postcode 3049, and a median house price of 840k. This one, most investors would probably have not heard of the name before. You would definitely have heard of Broadmeadows, but this is Westmeadows, materialistically very different, and that is the point. 750k to 850k, you're getting a 3 to 4 bedroom on 550 to potentially even at 700 square meter block. Bigger blocks than anything in the newer northern suburbs. Tree line street, 1970s, 80s, 90s homes on generous allotments with rebuild potential. Land value is what is really driving the equation here, but beware, it is a little bit hilly, so street by street, pocket by pocket is what we want to be making sure we are vetting through. But also, bidding and pest reports become a lot more structurally more important to validate the structure is still inapt. Lens 1, Scarcity, 3 building approvals across 3,233 dwellings. 3, not 300, not 30, let that sink in. The suburb is fully built out with no greenfield land remaining. Inventory is at about just over 1 month, the tightest in this entire top 5. Stock on market at 0.22%, and there's been very little to no vendor discounting and seeing a whopping 85% clearance rate. Only 93 properties are sold in the entire year. When a Westmeadows house comes to market, think of it as being a little bit of an event, but not a listing. Lens 2, infrastructure is strong and getting stronger. What I mean by that, it's adjacent to the South Morang freeway corridor. You've got the faster access to Melbourne Airport and the CBD. And of course, next to Broadmeadows train station within 5 minutes. Westmeadows Village provides the local retail hub. Hume City Council, which means it benefits from the Broadmeadows Future Activity Centre hub and provision. And of course, the planned Melbourne Airport rail link. Also being in close proximity to the airport corridor, you've got strong employment across logistics, freight, aviation, giving that suburb an employment base that a lot of residential pockets would lack at that 750 price point. Lens number 3, historical performance, and the surprise is, and it is a whopping surprise, at 5.38% annualized over 10 years. But the standout here is almost 13 average year hold period, longest in the top 5. So when people are buying in Westmeadows, they stay on average 13 years plus. And that's a good whopping sign of significance towards community stickiness, but also significance of owner-occupier appeal of wanting to be here. So your rental growth is at 8.8% across the past 3 years, being quite a healthy rental uplift. Lens number 4, future demand. What are we looking at here? Westmeadows is a suburb the market has not discovered across the investor community till today. 3,233 dwellings, 6,500 adults, small, quiet, established pocket, overlooked because of its proximity to the tarnished Broadmeadows appeal. The data, the research tells the real story. 1.22% vacancy, tightest in this analysis. Very low discounting, very high clearance rate, 8.8% growth over the past year in 2025. As the Broadmeadows hub progresses and the airport rail link advances, Westmeadows reprices as an airport CBD connectivity family suburb with generous lot sizes. Now let's face it, that repricing has not capitalized to its maximum potential just yet. And this is where your buying opportunity in the window lies, in this highly held owner-occupier driven suburb. And that's why we move to lens number 5, the owner-occupier appeal. Strong owner-occupier appeal at 75%. Got a medium age of 40, the most mature demographic here, which resonates back down to the hold period being 13 years plus. Your household size is about 3, established families, empty nesters, downsizers, an 80% unit ratio to housing diversity is quite a healthy one. At 840k for a house on 550 to 700 square meter, 14 kilometers from the CBD with a vacancy rate of 1.22% and days on market about 27 days, is a suburb which is outperforming itself in the inner middle ring of Melbourne. Now let's talk about that 5-year projection that everyone is anticipating to hear about. we're seeing a 30 to 45% compounded growth at 5 to 8% growth per year. So your 700k investment becomes a whopping 1.1 million in the next 5 years, and values a whopping 400k equity uplift, almost in proximity to $500,000 in Westmeadows. Here's what I want you to understand about timing. Melbourne's north has been overlooked for a very long time. That's not an opinion. The data supports it, the research supports it, but the window that is existing right now is not going to be permanent. The infrastructure spending is moving, rental vacancy is tightening across all suburbs. Your stock on market is at record lows, and once the first round of price growth gets reported in the major property publications, the next wave of buyers arrives, and the entry point at that 750 to 760 bracket ultimately closes. The investors who move in the next 6 to 12 months before a corridor gets mainstream attention are the ones who will build real equity down here. Everyone else is playing catch up. This is that window for Melbourne's north suburb to be coming in and capitalising on the buying opportunity right here.
Suburb review of your market.
What have you been enjoying by watching the videos?
Yeah, it's really entertaining and sort of like very insightful as well. I really
Yep.
enjoy it, watching it.
Yep.
And you're putting out great content.
Awesome. Are you an investor yourself?
Not really. I'm
Yeah.
a first-home buyer actually.
Yep.
Yeah.
Trying to buy a home?
I've already bought the home.
Congratulations, well
Awesome.
done.
Thank you.
All right, thanks for saying hi.
All right.
You give me 700k today and I was starting from scratch in this corridor. I know exactly where I'd be looking first. And it's Epping. Best entry point, strongest infrastructure, already delivered, functional operation and humming and buzzing. 3.5% yield carries the holding costs, meaning the gap between rent and mortgage becomes a lot more manageable while you wait for the capital growth to compound year on, year out. And it's 16 to 80% below the metro median, which means that even in a softer year, the downside is protected by the strong fundamentals of what we're seeing in Epping. Doreen is the highest growth pick, South Morang is the lowest risk pick, and Westmeadows is the under the radar silent performer pick. But if you want the strongest balance across all 5 lenses of scarcity, infrastructure, historical performance of growth, future demand, and a strong owner-occupier appeal at family level, Epping is where I would start. We work with investors across this entire northern corridor for the right reasons. If you want to know specifically what to target, which streets, which cactus, which property types, but also what to avoid within each suburb, that's equally more important. That's exactly what the strategy call with us is for. It's free, specific, it's built around your budget and what you're trying to achieve, and a not generic shortlist. Look it through the link below. Subscribe if you want a new suburb deep dive every single week. And if there's a corridor you want me to cover next, drop it in the comments. But also if you see me walking out into Epping Plaza, do come say hi, and I'll see you in the next one.